Hey guys, Mrs. Daniel. I thought I would try to give some assistance on number 4 from the first practice worksheet in case you need a reminder, because number 1, it's been a really long time since we've been together, and number 2, it's been an even longer time since we solved some equations. So I didn't know if you want me to do this algebraically or if you want me to do it the flow chart, so I thought maybe I could do it both ways. So let me start with algebraically. With the algebraic method, we have to find the two operations that are happening in this two-step equation. And when I'm looking at this equation, I can see that we are multiplying the variable by a 7. But if you notice, it's like a subtract 7. So that subtract 7 actually now becomes like a negative 7 that we're multiplying by. And then we also have this 4 in front, and that 4 in front is positive. So it's like we are adding the 4. Okay, which makes this problem a little more difficult. So if you want to, what you can do is you can rewrite it and you can say negative 7y plus 4 equals negative 66. Okay, and then when I go to solve this problem algebraically, I'm going to put the arrow right there in the equal sign, and that's so it stays balanced, right? Because we want to do whatever we do to one side, we want to do to the other side. Otherwise, it doesn't remain equal, which is very, very important in our mathematics. So in our two-step equations, basically we work our order of operations backwards. So if you know your order of operations, it ends with addition and subtraction. So I have to get rid of my plus 4, and I do this with an inverse operation. And the inverse of addition, which one way to think of it is opposite, is to subtract 4, because basically we're going to make this into 0 so that we're left with just this negative 7y, because we want to isolate that y, and isolate means to get it by itself. Kind of like now we're living in isolation without each other. Bummer. Anyways, so if I'm going to subtract 4 from my left side, I've also got to subtract 4 over here. I circle these two because they become a 0. Literally, a positive 4 and a negative 4 are a 0 pairs, and they meet in the middle on the number line at 0, so they disappear. And I'm still left with this negative 7y. That is this guy right there. Okay, on the other side, I have to be oh so careful of my integer rules. I am combining a negative 66 and a negative 4. So you have to go back to your integer rules. You have to be very thorough. Negative 66 soldiers combined with a negative 4 means that nobody in this team is going to make a 0 pair or die and go away. What it means is my negative army is just going to get stronger and stronger and stronger, and it's going further down the negative number line. So what I'm doing is I'm taking 66 soldiers, I'm giving them 4 more soldiers. So that's going to be 70 soldiers, but these are negative soldiers. Now, I've gotten rid of that plus 4 by subtracting 4 on both sides. The next step is to get rid of the multiplication. This multiplication is done is a negative 7, and it's a negative 7 times y. Okay, we want to isolate the y, and to isolate a y is not to make it 0y, because if you make it a 0, it goes away. It's to make it a single 1y. So to make that negative 7 into a 1, you divide it by itself. That's the rule every time you do these problems. You divide it by itself. So this time it happens to be a negative 7. And again, if I'm going to keep it equal, I'm going to divide the other side by a negative 7. Okay? A negative 7 divided by a negative 7 becomes a 1. A positive 1y, which is what we need. We have isolated our y, which is part of the solution process. And then a negative 70 divided by a negative 7, well, a negative divided by a negative is a positive. I'm using my integer rules. And then 70 divided by 7 is 10. So my answer is 10 using the algebraic method. Okay, now I also promised the flow chart. So I'm going to set up my flow chart for a two-step equation. It makes this, oops, I think I messed that one up. Hold on, I think I need to add more boxes. So let me just do it as I go to be safe. Okay, so in this one, we're still going to use this top equation where I rewrote it for my comfort level, because the other way over here was crazy when it said 4 minus 7y equals negative 66. Okay, I'm rewriting it by putting the negative 7y in front. I'm recognizing that this 4 is a plus 4 equals negative 66. Okay, my variable is y. And the first thing I'm doing to the y is I'm multiplying it by a negative 7. Okay, and that becomes a negative 7y. Then I'm going to take and I'm going to add 4 to that. And it's going to give me the whole thing, negative 7y plus 4. Okay, that's going in order with the order of operations. We do our multiplication and division, then our addition and subtraction. And when I do that, this is equivalent to the negative 66. All of this part of the flow chart that you see here that I'm going to highlight in yellow, that's all setting up the equation that was already given to us here. Okay, the solving part I'm going to do in the blue. So the nice thing about the flow chart is you just look up and down and you say, oh, well, if I had an add 4, to get rid of an add 4, I'm going to subtract 4. Again, you have to use your integer rules. You have to know that you're combining these together here. I'm going to have a negative 4 combined with a negative 66. Basically, what I have done is I took this negative 4, or this subtract 4, and I changed it to add a negative. Okay, let me say that again. It was a subtract 4, and I changed all of my subtractions into add a negative. So this becomes that negative 70. Okay, for the same reason it became the negative 70 over here. These are being added together. Nobody's coming together to make a zero pair and dying away. Then when I come over here, I'm going to do the opposite of this multiplication, and I'm going to divide by a negative 70. I'm sorry, negative 7. Negative 7. Make sure you're keeping your signs, okay? It's very important to keep up with the negative sign. Now, a negative divided by a negative, we know is a positive. And 70 divided by 7 is 10. And that's going to be my answer, y equals 10. Now, sometimes it's really nice to check our work. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to use this highlighted equation and prove to you that my answer is correct. I'm going to say, whoops, excuse me, let me get back to that screen. Negative 7 times 10 plus 4 equals a negative 66. Okay. And what I did is I put this y equals 10. I just said, oh, if y is 10, I'm going to substitute it in its place. So a negative 7 times 10 is a negative 70. If I add 4 to it, will I get a negative 66? Well, if I have negative 70 soldiers and I put a positive 4 soldiers lined up against it, there is going to be a battle because you have opposite operations here coming together, opposite signs. And so that negative 70 and those 4 positives are going to come, and these 4 positives are going to come over here and they're going to kill out 4 of these negatives, and they're going to make those 4 zero pairs and go away, which means you're going to take 4 out of that 70, which means you are going to get a negative 66 equals a negative 66, which means these answers that we got are correct, and we are awesome again today. Hope this helps. Thanks, guys.